It was an ordinary evening in our family home. My uncle and his wife were out at a work party, leaving me in charge as a babysitter for my younger cousin's brother. We had settled into a peaceful night with the usual routines of a quiet household enveloping us. The tranquility, however, was interrupted when a man approached our front door. It was unexpected and out of place. I cautiously peered through the peephole, my heart rate picking up slightly. The man outside seemed benign, asking about the whereabouts of our parents. His manner was polite, yet something about him didn't sit right with me. I responded carefully, not revealing too much, and decided to turn him away, politely yet firmly closing the door. After the door clicked shut, a sense of relief washed over me. I believe the potential threat, if there was any, had been averted. My brother and I resumed our activities, the incident with the stranger momentarily forgotten as we returned to our evening routine. I felt a false sense of security, naively thinking that closing the door had ended the stranger's curiosity. Later that evening, as the house settled into a deeper silence, a sound jolted me from my sense of calm. The creak of the front door slowly opening. My heart raced as I tiptoed to the hallway, only to freeze at the sight before me. It was the same man from earlier, now standing inside our home. My younger brother, oblivious to any danger, stood beside him, looking confused. The man's demeanor had drastically changed. Gone was the guise of casual curiosity. In its place was a more sinister intention. He was trying to befriend my brother. His tone was overly friendly, yet his actions had an underlying menace. Clearly, his intentions were far from innocent, and I feared for what he might be planning. I couldn't help but notice the alarming shift in the stranger's attitude. His smile seemed forced, and his eyes darted around our living room, assessing the space and possibly plotting his next move. It was evident he had some ulterior motive, possibly to abduct my brother, as he maneuvered to position himself closer to him. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to defuse the situation without escalating it further. I was scared when the man entered our home, but I knew I had to protect my younger brother. I shouted at the man, telling him to leave. He looked surprised and quickly left our house. I locked the door right after he was gone. I called the police, trying to stay calm as I explained what happened. They arrived soon and searched our house. They told us we were safe, but they couldn't find out who the man was. This left us feeling uneasy. After the police left, our house didn't feel the same anymore. It used to be where we felt safe, but now we were always worried. We checked the locks every night, and every small sound made us nervous. The thought that the man had been watching our house was scary. I was glad I could protect my brother that night, but the fear stayed with us. Our home, once a happy place, now felt different. It was hard to forget how quickly things had changed and how important it is to be careful, even in your home. That evening, I hired Ben, a 17-year-old babysitter, for my 6-year-old son, and I started routinely. I had plans for the evening and needed someone to watch over my son. However, things quickly went awry when Ben failed to show up at the agreed time. Disappointed and frustrated, I had to cancel my plans. Hours after he was supposed to arrive, Ben unexpectedly showed up at our doorstep. I was pretty upset and frustrated by his delay. I firmly instructed him to leave, thinking this would resolve the issue. I assumed sending him away would end it, but I was wrong. The night took a disturbing turn when I realized Ben was loitering outside our house instead of leaving. My growing alarm intensified as I noticed him near the door, making unsettling sounds as if he was listening and trying to gain entry. The situation escalated from being merely frustrating to outright alarming. I couldn't believe that Ben, whom I expected to be a responsible babysitter, was now posing a potential threat to our safety. His behavior was not just unprofessional, it was downright scary. This unexpected turn of events left me feeling vulnerable and concerned for the safety of my son and myself. My fear for my sons and my safety grew, So I called the police and secured the house, ensuring my son was safe. The police arrived shortly after my call. They found Ben sitting in his car, a short distance from our house. When confronted, he tried to feign innocence, concocting a story to explain his presence. His tale, however, was flimsy and contradicted by the evidence of his scheduled arrival time and my account of the night's events. It was clear to the officers and me that Ben's actions were not just irresponsible, but potentially dangerous. This intervention by the police brought a measure of relief, but the incident left a lasting impact. The trust I had placed in Ben as a caregiver was irrevocably broken, and the realization that he had fabricated a story to cover his tracks only added to my unease. My home, which should have been a sanctuary, felt violated. In the aftermath, I grappled with the knowledge that I had narrowly avoided placing my son in harm's way. The contrast between Ben's earlier demeanor as a seemingly reliable teenager and his actions at night was startling. His late arrival, followed by his refusal to leave and subsequent behavior, revealed a side of him that was both deceptive and intrusive. This experience served as a chilling reminder of the importance of vigilance and the need to protect my family, even in situations that initially seemed mundane or safe. When I took on the babysitting job, I was a 16-year-old eager for an overnight gig. Hired through a company, I anticipated a normal evening of watching over a 4-year-old girl. The father, an older man, welcomed me at the house, telling me his daughter was already asleep. Settling in for the night, I prepared myself for a quiet and centered babysitting task. However, as the evening wore on, I couldn't help but notice something odd about the house. It lacked any signs of a child living there. There were no toys scattered around, no small furniture fit for a child, and the kitchen was devoid of any kid-friendly foods. This absence of typical family markers made me feel increasingly uneasy. The more I observed, the more my suspicion grew. It seemed strange that a house supposedly with a young child had none of the usual mess and chaos associated with kids. The whole setup felt off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The situation intensified when I heard unexplained noises within the house later in the night. The unsettling sound of cracking floorboards and the occasional odd noise heightened my alarm. I became increasingly convinced that the job was not what it seemed. The lack of any child's presence, coupled with the eerie atmosphere of the house, led me to believe that I might have walked into a situation far more dangerous than a simple babysitting task. As the night deepened, the house seemed to come alive with strange noises, creaks, and soft whispers filtered through the silence, making the atmosphere increasingly oppressive. I tried to dismiss them as normal sounds of an old house settling, but a creeping sensation of being watched or not alone grew stronger. Resting on the couch, I attempted to sleep, but the unease and the unexplained sounds kept me wide awake, my eyes darting to every corner at the slightest noise. In the dead of night, my fears escalated into a terrifying reality. I observed the father sneaking back into the house. His movements were stealthy, and he exuded a menacing aura that sent chills down my spine. The sight of him moving quietly, almost predatorily, convinced me that I was in immediate danger. It dawned on me then, there might never have been a daughter. The entire setup of the babysitting job might have been a ruse. Relying on instinct, I knew I had to escape. Seizing the first opportunity, I quietly made my way to the door, my heart pounding with every step. I didn't stop to gather my things, nor did I dare look back. The only thought in my mind was to get out of that house as quickly as possible. Once outside, the cool night air hit me, but it did little to calm my racing heart. I moved quickly, putting as much distance as I could between myself and the house. The realization that I had potentially walked into a trap set for sinister purposes was overwhelming. The fear of what could have happened had I not acted on my instincts haunted me as I made my way to safety. It was only when I was far enough away that I allowed myself to stop and catch my breath. The night's events played over in my mind, each detail more unsettling than the last. The lack of any real evidence of a child in the house, the father's late-night return, and his unnerving behavior, it all pointed to a disturbing scenario.